Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast show. And today we're going to be reading The Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle. But we're only going to be reading a half a part of a chapter in the final chapter. We're also going to be looking at a couple of things in this book. I have not read this book yet, but it's called the Narnia Trivia book, so I'm guessing they're like questions or something like that, I'm guessing. So we'll look through this. First we're gonna listen to this. So some of you guys might already know what happens at the end of this book. But if you guys don't know what happens, stop watching this and go read it for yourselves. Because it's a really good book and I don't want you guys to get spoiled by anything. But before we start, if you guys end up liking this video, please double check if you are subscribed, because there's only a small percent of people who watch my videos. So if you go check the subscribe button down below, that would mean everything to me. But anyways, let's just get into this. So this is called The Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle, which is the last book in the Narnia series. So I have a bookmark here, So the first part is about Susan Pevensey, who wasn't brought back to Narnia at this time in this book. So this is when Tyrion meets the 7 friends of Narnia. "Sir," said Tyrion, when he had greeted all of these, "if I have read the Chronicles aright, there should be another. Has not your Majesty 2 sisters? Where is Queen Susan?" "My sister Susan," answered Peter shortly and gravely, "is no longer a friend of Narnia." "Yes," said Eustace, "and whenever you try to get her to come and talk about Narnia or do anything about Narnia, she says, 'What wonderful memories you have. Fancy you're still thinking about all those funny games we used to play when we were children.'" "Oh, Susan," said Jill, she's interested in nothing nowadays except nylons and lipstick and invitations." Oh, wait. Hold on. Okay. She always was a jolly sight too keen on being grown up." "Grow up indeed," said the Lady Polly. "I wish she would have grown up. She wasted all her school time wanting to be the age she is now, and she'll waste the rest of her life trying to stay at that age. Her whole idea is to race onto the silliest time of no one's life as quick as she can, and then stop. There as long as she can." "Well, don't let's talk about that now," said Peter. "Look, here are lovely fruit trees. Let us taste them." And then for the first time, Tyrion looked about him and realized how very queer and this adventure was. So there you have it about Susan. She's no longer a friend of Narnia. She was too keen on being grown up. So will she get back to Narnia? I don't think we'll probably ever know. C.S. Lewis is gone, so I don't think we'll ever know if she's ever going to get back to Narnia. C.S. Lewis did say in an interview, though, that she will get back to Narnia in her own way. So I guess that cancels it out. I guess we'll see if anyone else will continue the Narnia books. Also, a reboot of Narnia will be coming out on Netflix hopefully very soon, which I am excited for. And if you guys are excited for it too, make sure to leave a like on this video. So now we're going back to the last chapter of this book. Chapter 16. I think it's right here. Chapter 16. Farewell to the Shadowlands. If one could run without getting tired, I don't think one would often want to do anything else, but there might be special reasons for stopping. And it was a special reason which made Eustace presently shout, "I say steady, look what we're coming to." And well he might. For now they saw before the Koljan pool, and beyond the pool the high, unclimbable cliffs, and pouring down the cliffs, thousands of tons of water, every second flashing the diamonds in some places, and dark glassy green in others. the great waterfall, and already the thunder of it was in their ears. "Don't stop! Further up and further in!" called Fairsight, tilting his flight a little upward. "It's all very well for him," said Eustace, but Jewel also cried out, "Don't stop! Further up and further in! Take it in your stride!" His voice could only just be heard above the roar of the water, but next moment everyone saw that he had plunged into the pool. The helter-skelter behind him, with splash after splash, all the others did the same. Nora was not bitterly cold, as all of them, and especially Puzzle, expected, but of a delicious foamy coolness. They all found that they were swimming straight for the waterfall itself. "This is absolutely crazy," said Eustace to Edmund. "I know, and yet," said Edmund. "Isn't it wonderful?" said Lucy. "Have you noticed one can't feel afraid even if one wants to? Try it." "By Jove, neither one can," said Eustace after he had tried. Jewel reached the foot of the waterfall first, but Tyrion was only one just behind him. Jill was last, so she could see the whole thing better than the others. She saw something white moving steadily up the face of the waterfall. That white thing was the unicorn. You couldn't tell whether he was swimming or climbing, but he moved on higher and higher. The point of his horn surveyed the water just above his head, and it cascaded out into two rainbow-colored streams, all around his shoulders. Just behind him came King Tyrion. He moved his legs and arms as if he were swimming, but he moved straight upwards, as if one could swim up the wall of a house. What looked funniest was the dogs. During the gallop they had not been at all out of breath, but now they were swarmed and wriggled upwards. There were plenty of spluttering and sneezing among them. That was because they would keep on barking, and every time they barked they got their mouths and noses full of water. But before Jill had time to notice all these things fully, she was going up the waterfall herself. It was the sort of thing that would have been quite impossible in our world. Even if you hadn't been drowned, you would have smashed to pieces by a terrible weight of water against the countless jags of rock. But in that world you could do it. You went on up, and up, and up, with all kinds of reflected lights flashing at you from the water, and all manner of colored stones flashing through it. It seemed as if you were climbing up the light itself, and always higher and higher and higher, till the sense of height would have terrified you, if you could be terrified. But later it was only glorious exciting, and then at the last one came to a lovely smooth green curve, in which the water poured over the top, and found that one was out. Over the level river, above the waterfall, the current was racing away behind you, and you were such a wonderful swimmer that you could make headway against it. Soon they were all on the bank, dripping but happy. So if you guys have seen the movie of The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, or have read the Dawn Treader, you would see that they go into water, just like cruising along a river of lilies. And Susan, the name Susan means lilies. We'll also look at the clues at the end of this book when we're done reading this. But I think this might give us a clue of what happened to Susan after all of what happened to these kids. I'm not going to spoil it, but we'll find out what happens. A long valley opened up ahead of the great snow mountains, now much nearer. Stood up against the sky. "Further up and further in," cried Jewel instantly. They were off again. They were out of Narnia and now up into the western wild, which neither Tyrion nor Peter nor even the eagle had ever seen before, but the Lord Diggory and the Lady Polly had. Do you remember? They said, and said it in a steady voices too, without panting. Through the whole party was now running faster than an arrow flies. Can you imagine a river flowing faster than an arrow? Or panting, or the party. But Lord, said Tyrion, is it then true, as the stories tell, that you two journeyed here on the very day the world was made? Yes, said Diggory, and it seems to me as if it was only yesterday. And on a flying horse, asked Tyrion, is that part true? Certainly, said Diggory, but the dogs barked. Faster, faster! As they ran faster and faster till it was more like flying than running, and even the eagle overhead was going no faster than they. And they went through winding valley, after the winding valley, and up the steep sides of hills, and faster than ever down on the other side, following the river and sometimes crossing it and skimming across mountain lakes, as if they were living speedboats, till at last, at the far end of one long lake, which looked as blue as a turquoise, they saw a smooth green hill. Its sides were as steep as the sides of a pyramid, and round the very top, as if it was a green wall. But above the wall rose the branches and the trees, whose leaves looked like silver, and their fruit just like gold. Seeing fruit like gold, that would be cool. Further up and further in, roared the unicorn, and no one held back. They charged straight at the foot of the hill, and then found themselves running up it, almost as water from a broken wave runs up a rock out of the point of some bay. Through the slope was nearly as steep as the roof of a house, and the grass was smooth as a bowling green. No one slipped, only when they had reached the very top did they slow up. That was because they found themselves facing great golden gates, and for a moment none of them was bold enough to try if at the gates would open. They just all felt just as they had felt about the fruit. Dare we? Is it right? Can it be meant for us? But while they were standing thus, a great horn, wonderfully loud and sweet, blew somewhere inside the walled garden, and the gates swung open. Tyrion stood holding his breath and wondering who would come out, and what came was the last thing he had expected. A little sleek, bright-eyed talking mouse with a red feather stuck in his circlet. Now, before we read this, if you guys have known Narnia for many years, can you guys tell me who that is? I know who it is, but can you guys tell me in the comments if you guys know who it is? Please type down in the comments section. On its head and its left paw resting on a long sword, it bowed, a most beautiful bow, and said in a shrill voice, "Welcome, in the lion's name, come further up and further in." So which means this mouse, he was so tiny, had a little red feather. He put his sword down and went, just like people do to kings and queens. This is the only king and queen movie I've seen, to be honest. I haven't seen any other movies with kings and queens. Probably had when I was little, but, Maybe let's continue. Then Tyrion saw King Peter and King Edmund and Queen Lucy rush forward to kneel down and greet the mouse. Then they all cried out, "Reap-a-cheep!" And Tyrion breathed fast with the sheer wonder of it, for now he knew that he was looking at one of the great heroes of Narnia, Reap-a-cheep the mouse, who had fought at the great battle of Baruna, and afterwards sailed to the world's end, with King Caspian and Seafarer. But before he had much time to think about this, he felt two strong arms thrown about him, and felt a bearded kiss on his cheeks, and heard a well-remembered voice saying, "What, lad, art thicker and taller since I last touched thee?" It was his own father, the good King Arielin, but not as Tyrion had seen him last when they brought him home pale and wonderful from his fight with the giant, nor even as Tyrion remembered him in the later years when he was a gray-headed warrior. This was his father, young and merry, and he could just remember him from very early days when he himself had been a little boy playing games with his father in the castle garden at Cair Paravel. Just before bedtime on summer evenings, the very smell of the beer and milk he used to have for supper came back to him. Drool thought to himself, I will leave them to talk for a little, and then I'll go back and greet the good King Erlin. Many a bright apple has he given me when I was just a colt. But the next moment he had something else to think of, for out of the gateway, there came a horse so mighty and noble that even a unicorn might feel shy in his presence. A great winged horse. It looked a moment, and at the Lord Diggory and the Lady Polly, and neighed out, "What cousins?" And they both shouted, "Fledge, good old Fledge," and rushed to kiss it. But by now the mouse once again urgently come in, so all of them passed and through the golden gates into the delicious smell that blew toward them out of the sight of the garden and into the cool mixture of sunlight and shadow under the trees, walking in springing turf that was all dotted with white flowers like lilies. I'm guessing that's what they mean. The very first thing which struck everyone was that the place was far larger than it had seemed from outside, but no one had time to think about it, for people were coming up to meet the newcomers from every direction. Everyone who had ever heard of it, if you knew the history of those countries, seemed to be there. There was Glimfeather the owl, and Puddlejum the marshwiggle, and King Rillian, and the Disenchanted, and his mother, the star daughter of his great father Caspian himself. And close beside him were Lord Trinian, and the Lord Byrne, and Trumpkin the dwarf, and Shovelhunter the good badger, with the Glenstorm the centaur, and 100 other heroes of the great war of Deliverance. And then from another side came Cor the king of Archland, with King Lew, his father, and his wife, Queen Erivius, and the brave Prince Cor and Thunderfist, his brother, and Bree the horse, and Hwin the mare. And then, which was wonder beyond all the wonders of Tyrion, there came a further away in the past, the two beavers and Tumnus the fawn. So there is a ton of all these heroes. There is a freaking herd of all these people. And, like, damn, bro, there's a lot of people that these kings and queens, including Tyrion and High King Peter the Magnificent, all, like, the Seven Friends of Narnia, they got to be united with a lot of people that they have been with before this tragedy happened. I'm not going to explain the tragedy, I know I already said that, but I'm just going to keep saying it. And there was a greeting and kissing, handshaking, and old jokes revived. You have no idea how good an old joke sounds when you take it out against the rest of 500-600 years. And the whole company moved forward to the center of the orchard, where the phoenix sat in a tree and looked down upon them all. And at the foot of that tree there were 2 thrones, and on those 2 thrones a king and queen, so grateful and beautiful, everyone bowed down before them. And well they might, for these 2 were King Frank and Queen Helen, for whom all the most ancient kings of Narnia and Archenland had descended. And Tyrion felt as you would feel if you were brought before Adam and Eve in their glory. But half an hour later, or it might have been a half 100 years later, for time there was not like time. Here Lucy stood in front of her dear friend, her oldest Narnia friend, the fawn Tumnus, looking down over the wall of the garden and seeing all Narnia spread out below. But when you looked down, you could find that this hill was much higher than you thought, It sank down with shining cliffs thousands of feet below them, and trees in that lower world looked no bigger than grains in green salt. Then she turned inward again and stood with her back to the wall and looked at the garden. "I see," she said at last. "Thoughtfully, I see now. This garden is like the stable. It is far bigger inside than it was outside." "Of course, daughter of Eve," said the fawn. "The further you go up and the further you go in, the bigger everything gets. The inside is larger than the outside." Lucy looked hard at the garden and saw that it was not only a garden, but a whole world, with its own rivers, the woods and the sea, the mountains, but they were not strange. She knew them all. "I see," she said. "This is still Narnia, and more real and more beautiful than Narnia down below, just as it was more real and more beautiful than the Narnia outside the stable door. I see a world within Narnia." "Yes," said Mr. Tumnus, "like an onion, except that as you continue to go in and in, each circle is larger than the last." And Lucy looked this way and found a new and beautiful thing had happened to her. Whatever she looked at, however far away it might be, once she had fixed her eyes steadily on it, became quite clear and close as if she were looking through a telescope. She could see the whole southern desert and beyond in the great city of Tashbaan, and eastward she could see Cair Paravel. On the edge of the sea, in the very window of the room that had been her own, and far out to the sea she could discover the islands after islands in the end of the world, and beyond end, the huge mountain which they had called Aslan's country. But now she saw that it was part of a great chain of mountains which ringed round the whole world. In front of her seemed to come quite close. Then she looked on her left and saw what she took to be a great bank of brightly colored cloud cut off from the gap. But she looked harder and saw that it was not a cloud, but a real land. And when she had fixed her eyes on one particular spot of it, she at once cried, "Peter, Edmund, come and look! Come quickly!" As they came, they looked. Their eyes also had become like hers. "Why," exclaimed Peter, "it's England, and the house itself, Professor Kirk's old home. The old home in the country where all our adventures began." "I thought the house had been destroyed," said Edmund. "So it was," said the fawn, "but you are now looking at the England within England, the real England, just as this is the real Narnia, and that inner England no good thing is destroyed." Suddenly, they shifted their eyes on another spot, and then Peter and Edmund and Lucy gasped with amazement and shouted out to began waving at there. They saw their own father and mother, waving back at them across the great deep valley. It was like when you see people waving at you from a deck on a big ship when you are waiting on the quay to meet them. How could we get at them?" said Lucy. "That's easy," said Mr. Tumnus. That country is this country, and all the real countries are only spurs jutting out from the great mountains of Aslan. We have to walk along the ridge, upward and inward, till it joins on. And listen, there is King Frank's horn. We must all go up." And soon they found themselves all walking together in a great bright procession. It was up toward the mountains, higher than you could see in the world, even if they were there to be seen. But there was no snow on those mountains. They were forests and green slopes, and sweet orchids and flashing waterfalls, one above the other, going up forever. And in all the land, they were walking on grew nearer all the time. with a deep valley on each side, and across the valley the land which was the real England grew nearer and nearer. The light ahead was growing stronger. Lucy saw that a great series of many-colored cliffs led up in front of them, a giant staircase. And then she forgot everything else, because Aslan himself was coming, leaping down from cliff to cliff like a living cataract and power of beauty. And the first very person whom Aslan called him was Puzzle the donkey. He never saw a donkey look feebler and sillier than Puzzle did as he walked up to Aslan, and he looked beside Aslan, as small as a kitten looks beside a Saint Bernard. The lion bowed down his head and whispered something to Puzzle, in which his long ears went down. But then he said something else as the ears perked up again. The humans couldn't hear what he said at the time. Then Aslan turned to them and said, "Do not look yet so happy as I mean you to be." Lucy said, "We're so afraid of being sent away, Aslan, and you have sent us back into our own world so often." "No fear of that," said Aslan. "Have you not guessed?" Their hearts leaped into a wild hope rose within them. This is where it comes, guys. "It was a real railroad accident," said Aslan softly. "Your father and mother and in all you are, as you used to call it, the Shadowlands. Dead. The term is over, the holidays have begun, the dream is ended, this is the morning." As he spoke, he no longer looked at them like a lion, but the things that began to happen after, they were so great and beautiful that I cannot write them. And for us, this is the end of the stories, and we can mostly truly say that they all lived happily ever after. But for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in the world and their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover of the title page. Now at last, they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth had read, which goes on forever, and which every chapter is better than the one before. The end. So, I understand that it's sad of what happens at the end of this book. They were on a railroad train, it crashed, and Aslan just comes to them and say, what you just call the Shadowlands, dead. They're dead, and they don't know what's even going on. So, what about Susan though? Let's talk about Susan for a second. Now, I see these videos that Susan has a problem, and she does what every grown-up does. She grew up. But does Aslan have a problem with growing up? Is he like mad that Susan became an adult and wanted to not believe in Narnia? Well, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, C.S. Lewis said that she will get back to Narnia in her own way. But what if C.S. Lewis was making a joke? A child once wrote to him saying that he should make a whole story entitled to Queen Susan and her being reunited. And that's when C.S. Lewis said, the stories don't tell us exactly what happened to Susan, but she will in fact get to Narnia in her own way. Aslan's country. So I don't know if Aslan has a problem with Susan, of Susan growing up, but if she doesn't get sent to Aslan's country, she probably got sent to hell. But we'll never know unless they make a new book. Anyways, let's look at the clues here. So, right here we see Aslan's country, right there. You guys see that? See Aslan's country, right here? And I don't really know where they were riding into. It looks like probably around here, where they were riding into to get to Aslan's country, but I can't really read maps that well, so yeah. Alright, so before I end this episode of this podcast, let's look at the Narnia trivia book. So let's see this. This is also by C.S. Lewis. So book 1, yeah, it's just saying what the books are. So the Narnia trivia book. The magician's nephew. Question number 1. What does Polly call the place where she plays on rainy days? Oh, I don't even remember. Because I read this book a long time ago for school. Yeah, I don't know what that question is. We'll read this probably another day, and we'll probably read the other books. But yeah, so at the end of this book, everyone dies, and it's a complete tragedy of how it happened. If Susan went on that train with them, she would have been sent to Narnia, just like Peter, Jill, and all the other friends of Narnia. But it looks like to me that she just wasn't. I don't even know how to explain it, to be honest. But hopefully at some point, we'll find out what's gonna happen to Susan. And what's going to happen to the other friends of Narnia while they're in Aslan's country. But thank you everybody so much for watching episode 2 of the podcast show by me. If you guys liked it, then please comment down below if you guys want me to maybe read some more of Narnia. Or we can just, it can be a live stream. I can answer questions of what you guys want me to do. But, see you guys. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.